This is longtime gamer Venry Fairden introducing Uncle Troy's Minecraft videos.
Hello folks, Uncle Troy here, playing a little Minecraft, and the question today is, why do and the question will make more sense here in just a second. Here we are. The question today is, why does this skeleton spawner right over here have a pig inside it? Can you see that? Let's get up here. Yeah, there's a little pig spinning around. And the question is, why on a multiplayer server is there a pig there, where on single player server there would be a little skeleton there?
Hello again, young Minecraft fans. This here is Uncle Troy. A little bit of a sore throat, but we're getting by. We have us a skeleton spawner. I definitely see a little skeleton buzzing around in there. We have us a skeleton spawner. I definitely see a little skeleton buzzing around in there.
There we go. And the very short answer is that, well, single and multiplayer servers handle that differently. The long version is that, alright, we're going to have to do some what you call deep thought here. So I'm just going to sit down here and be looking at the pig spawner while I explain all this. Alright, in the single player version of the game, your computer handles everything. Everything, when you start a new map, your computer creates the map, generates the terrain, creates the mountains, the valleys, the ponds, the oceans, the trees, and the caves, and decides where these dungeons with these spawners go. And your computer does all that. And then your computer, when you go around the world digging up blocks or placing blocks, the computer keeps track of that and saves that information to the hard drive every couple seconds. So as you're exploring the world and you are, for example, digging this up on a single player world, your computer is keeping track of it, and as you go into new areas, it will generate new parts of the world, chunks. And then as you get closer and closer to, say, a spawner or a dark area of a cave, assuming that was dark up there, it'll say, oh, we need to spawn a monster. We need to spawn a monster up there. We hasn't lit it up yet. Or we're close to a monster spawner in a dungeon, and we need to spawn a monster, and your computer will spawn the monster. And in this case, it would spawn a skeleton. But in a multiplayer world, and like I said, all that on a single player world is on your computer. It's your copy of Minecraft that's doing that. I was kind of hoping that grass would spread. I was going to try to lead grass all the way down here to see if I could get a pig to spawn. But that will take quite a while, and we don't have enough time tonight. But I might make a little dirt path here anyway, just for giggles. Alright, so that's how the single player version of the game works. I guess we could sit here and watch grass grow, couldn't we? Okay, so you say, Uncle Troy, why are you discussing the single player version of the game and the multiplayer version of the game as if they're different games? Because, I'll click on the same shortcut, I go to the same website and click play in browser, regardless of whether I'm going a single player or multiplayer. Well, you click on the same shortcuts, you load the same game in your browser, but actually the game acts very differently when you're in multiplayer. When you're in a multiplayer, the game is actually in two parts. There's the client, which is the part of the game you run locally on your computer, and then there is the server. And the server may be right down the street, it may be across the country, it may be on the other side of the world, but the server does the stuff that we discussed earlier. The server creates the world. The server decides where the dungeons go. The server decides what type of spawner is in a dungeon. And the server, as you explore, the server decides what monsters get spawned, and the server decides we need a monster up here because it's dark up there, or the server decides we need a monster here because we have a spawner of a certain type. And because the server is taking care of that part, the client doesn't need to know what type of spawner that is, because the client isn't responsible for, your own little version there on your own computer isn't responsible for creating the monsters. The server is. So the server needs to keep track of what type of spawner that is, but the client doesn't. And apparently the default type of spawner is a pig spawner. So lacking any further information, the client just shows it as a pig. And we can test that just a little bit by, let's go up here and see if this is spread any more. Nope. Well darn. Okay, so we are going to leave the multiplayer world. Notice that I'm currently downloading it. Download stop. Good. We disconnect and go into a single player world where we have been recording private. Play selected world, and after a few seconds, come on here, we load back into the same world, but now I'm in a single player version of this world. And takes a few seconds to load. And once again, we are still here in the same cave. And you say, well, nothing's changed. And more importantly, this is still showing as a pig spawner. Now, in theory, if I was able to get this grass to spread all the way down here, apparently pig spawners only work when they spawn next to grass. So if we could lead grass in here, you could see that in the single player world, a pig would spawn. And that's because the world downloader, when it downloads the world, can only record information about the world that the server sends to the client. And as I said before, the server does not send to the client what type of spawner that is. The client doesn't need to know because the server will handle creating skeletons all around this spawner when the mood strikes it. Alright, well, I suppose I could go AFK for an hour or two and let all this grass spread, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, let's go back to the multiplayer, connect to our private server, and just to prove this isn't hacked, just to prove this is actually a skeleton spawner, we are going to do the proverbial stupid thing, and we're going to make it a little darker in here. And we're going to wait for the spawner to spin up. Yep. And generate a skeleton. And what happened was the server decided that it was time to generate a skeleton and generated one. And it sent that information to the client. And Bob's your uncle. There we go. Now, let me exit this again. And we weren't downloading, so none of the changes we made get reflected in our private world here. And this should bring us back into the single player world exactly where we left off. Right up here. Now we run down here, and in this time, if we clear all the torches out, and make it pretty darn dark in here, the pig will just spin and spin and spin forever, and maybe it'll go poof here in a second. But because the type of spawner was not sent to the client doesn't know that that's a skeleton spawner, and it doesn't know that it's supposed to spawn skeleton. It thinks it's a generic spawner, which happens to be a pig spawner. And since a pig spawner can only work in a certain light level or with grass around or whatever there is about pigs, this pig spawner will never spawn a pig. It might if I could get grass down in here and get the light level right, but as is, we can sit here forever and just watch this pig spin around and spin around and spin around and never see it spawn anything, and certainly not see it spawn the skeleton, because the single player version of this game that we're playing right now does not know that that is a skeleton spawner. And because this is a single player, just a backup single player version of the multiplayer server, I can do this and not feel bad, because when I go back, quit, and go back to our private server again and load up where we were, I'm going to go ahead and download this world, which is what I'm trying to get in the habit of doing every time, so I always have a recent backup. As you can see, our pig spawner is still sitting here. Now, I hope I've explained it a little bit, why there's pig spawners in multiplayer worlds, so you can stop. I've not had a problem, but I know some people that post Let's Plays on YouTube have complained that every time they show a spawner in a dungeon, they get comments saying, oh, you hacked that in because it's a pig spawner. And on my world, if that was a skeleton spawner, it would show a skeleton in it. Well, that's because you're playing a single player world instead of a multiplayer world. So it all boils down to that the single player game and the multiplayer game are different. Sometime back, I think when Notch was still the primary developer on Minecraft, he said it was going to be one of the goals to make the single player game and the multiplayer game the same, use the same code base, which means there wouldn't be differences, because your single player game would basically be a multiplayer game played on your computer, with your computer also acting as the server, I think, and that would get rid of almost all the inconsistencies between single and multiplayer Minecraft play. But that has not happened yet, so once again, that is why we have pig spawners instead of a skeleton spawner right there. And it has gotten dark while I wasn't paying attention. I guess I need to go back to base, sleep out the night, and call it a day. Oh, in the meantime, let's take a short commercial break so we can say hello to some new subscribers. Okay, and we are proud to welcome our two newest subscribers. We have Noisemaker 1998. Welcome aboard. And we also have, I'm going to say that's pronounced Domo Oblivion. And also welcome aboard, which brings our total up to 48 or 47, depending on which page of the YouTube subscriber list you look at. However many it is, I want to thank you very much for subscribing. I really appreciate it. And now back to the show. And we're back. I think that's all I had to say today. I just wanted to get that explanation, or lack of, recorded while I was still thinking of it. Because I'd actually meant to record something like that in the past and had completely and utterly forgotten, so I wanted to get that on tape. So I'm going to take a nap here, maybe do some more adventuring, but in the meantime, this is Uncle Troy signing out. Please have a good night.